Welcome to ND and Me, a podcast to share NDers' lived experiences.
Nadine, please introduce yourself to our viewers and listeners.
Well, hello, I'm Nadine from the Netherlands. I'm 47. I'm already going overboard in the details. I am a international communication specialist, and I specialize mostly in science writing. So that means making geek speak understandable for the non-nerd, and typography, because I did design and foreign affairs when I was studying journalism. I also have a podcast called Special Needs Supermom, because I have two special needs kids, a wonder boy, 19 years old, that has autism and ADHD, and an 18-year-old supergirl who battles juvenile arthritis, has an autoimmune disease on her eyes, and because of this, all kinds of other mental shit. Excuse my language.
Carry on. I'll just mark it up for kids.
I'm an author. I wrote a children's book about juvenile arthritis. I'm a board member of the Dutch Juvenile Arthritis Association, volunteer. I'm also training or studying ADHD coaching, so I can, because I get more and more people asking me about it. So I thought, there must be some autism in me as well. I like to follow the rules and have the papers. So I'm doing that as well. And I'm also a military spouse. So yeah, I think that's about it. That fills my days and nights. And oh yeah, I graduated cum laude from the ADHD Academy at the age of 45. And I always thought I was just really busy because I just like to do a lot of things. And, I'm a mom, but apparently there was a reason for it. And even with all my knowledge about my son, him having a full head and always busy and time blind, I really linked that to his autism. Never really considered that was, ADHD for me as well. So I relearned about ADHD about 2 years ago. Oh, I think I just missed my ADHD birthday.
Yeah, mine was a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if I should be celebrating it.
Well, yeah.
That's a whole conversation, guys.
That's a whole conversation, but I made it really because I started questioning myself, because I interviewed a young woman for my podcast, 27 years old, and she was diagnosed later in life. Well, later in life, if you're 27, okay, but and she was talking to me, and my mouth just dropped open. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hear myself. So I thought, my son always had to do all these tests. I think it would be really interesting for me to, okay, so how is that to have all these tests done and people evaluate you and looking into you? So I thought, my son had to undergo it several times because we lived abroad several times. And apparently, if you have autism and ADHD in America, that's different than when you go back to the Netherlands. So you have to redo all the bloody tests again. The same for dyslexia, so much fun. But yeah, it was a whole day. So it was a whole day just about me. So I was getting out of the house and I just had to talk, and they listened, and I had to do a few really fun computer tests that I aced because I'm really competitive. So yeah, I really liked that day. And it was also because part of the day, I had to try Ritalin because I had to do a computer test with and without medication.
Right.
And I remember after about half an hour or an hour, I was having lunch, and suddenly I went like, where are all the voices? This is quiet. Well, this is boring. And I went like, but in the evening I went like, that's why all the other people are so relaxed. I remember standing at the train station in the evening. It was December, so it was dark and cold. And normally, you see all those office buildings and you see lights behind the window. And I come up with all these stories about people working late and not coming home to their family on time. I have a gazillion stories in my head at the same time. But after the day and the medication was still working, I was just standing there, just waiting on the train. I'm like, that's why other people maybe are not so tired at the end of the day, because wow, I compared it like it's like having 2 glasses of wine without the side effects. Because I'm 47 years old, so if I take 2 glasses of wine, I get tired. So and so many things suddenly made sense. And I always made, oh, I'm sorry about this. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot again. And now I'm like, it's not an excuse. It's not an excuse.
It's a reason.
But it's a reason.
Yeah.
So for me, that helped a lot. Like,
Yeah. And that's one of the struggles that I've been working with for a little while. So in my previous job, I was doing HR consulting, organizational change stuff based around the work of Professor Sidney Dekker in fair, just, restorative cultures. And the purpose of that is to remove fault and blame unless there is malintent.
Oh, wow.
And then build in responsibility and accountability to stop it happening again. So he's done loads and loads of work in healthcare sectors. And my biggest client was the Public Health Service in the UK. And for me, the biggest mindset shift in that space was removal of the term excuse. There's reasons and there's outcomes.
Yeah.
There's you can forgive me for something that was inside or outside of my control, but I'm not using that as an excuse. I'm telling you what's happened.
Yeah.
And if you think that that's an excuse, then that's you problem.
Yeah.
So, in the family, my wife's got autoimmune conditions, and she's unable to do stuff. So I'm not allowed to call her lazy because she's got stuff on that means that she can't do stuff. Now, that's not her excusing that she can't. It's a reason why she can't.
Yeah.
So, and then I have executive dysfunction and chase endorphins and would rather do anything than what I'm being told to do because it might also be PDA. And I'm called lazy. I'm like, you can't have it both ways.
No.
You can't share your reasons and then say that I can't be excused, be forgiven, being given leeway because of all of this stuff. Yeah, well, you can control it. Can I?
No.
Really? Yeah. So that's an ongoing, interesting debate in the house. This last month, we've had a call from the school. So I've got 4 kids, ranging between nearly 13 and 17 and a half.
Oh, so much fun. All the hormones together.
So the youngest has drawn some attention at school. We've had a call from student welfare, and they're like, do you want your daughter assessed for like autism and ADHD? And we're like, why? I was diagnosed 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, when she was at primary school, because they change over from primary school to high school at 11. When she was at primary school, the support team there said she's getting all the support she needs. Getting a diagnosis won't change that because we support kids on their needs, not on their diagnosis. And I'm like, that's how it should be. Thank you very much. And now, the new student support guys are like, you should get a diagnosis because we can't offer you support without a diagnosis. And I'm like, that's exactly wrong. You should be supporting my child for my child's needs. And it shouldn't matter if they're ick, calculaic, axic, or anything else. And all of these co-occurrences overlap each other, and you just want to give her a label so then you can stereotype her by the label. There's.
Well, I see pros and cons in it.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. So do I, and I was just getting to the caveat to say that I'm old enough to take time to consider whether or not I wanted to get diagnosed. The company I worked for previously paid for it because there was challenges within the workplace, and their founder is neurodivergent. So it was like, I'm neurodivergent. You're definitely neurodivergent. We'll pay for an assessment. Do you want an assessment?
You can spot them the moment you get diagnosed.
And I took 6 or 8 weeks racking myself to go, well, do I want to know? There's a lot of grief and shame associated with some of these labels. That there's something wrong with you. Well, maybe there's not something wrong. Maybe I'm just different. But the fact that the title itself says disorder and deficiency, then, well, yeah, maybe that's why there's a stereotype around some of these disses, because they aren't as good as they could be.
No.
Normatively measured, and a whole other conversation of normativity, which we don't need to necessarily bore ourselves with. But yeah, it's a testing and trying time.
Yeah, and I totally get it. Because we all have things here. I also have I've got asthma now, long COVID. So much fun. So no energy when you have ADHD. That's really weird.
So is that like procrastination turned up to 11? Because it's I really want to do it, but I definitely can't.
Yeah, it's like, so in my mind, it's like, but in our household, we were always like, it's okay to have medication. Your mom needs medication for her lungs. Your sister needs medication for, we would say your bones. It's not really for your bones, but for her juvenile arthritis. And you need medication to help to calm your mind, and it's totally fine. And I remember I was so proud that we always said it's totally fine if you have autism or ADHD or whatever. And I remember on a family gathering, we always made jokes about ADHD or autism, or being not able to breathe. But the outside world doesn't always understand it. And I remember my son being, I think he was like 9 years old at the time. My mom told him something, and he said, "Grandma, this is way too much information. This is totally not autism friendly. I can't handle this." And she went like, "Shh, you shouldn't say out loud that you're autistic." And he said, "Grandma, I have autism, and there's nothing wrong with that." And I went like, yes, I succeeded in life. But then you go to college, and then you want to find a job, and you're so proudly, proudly, you're just saying you have autism and ADHD. But now you're facing this workforce with people, and when they hear autism, they think about Rain Man.
Well, or Simple Jack.
It's just
it's
so. And now he had a tough time finding an internship. He studied banking and insurance, my son. And even at school, it's so funny. You can go to special education, and you can get all kinds of help at a regular school. But the moment you go to college or university, apparently you're cured. And there are no extra services anymore. And because my son is so social and nice, and he can, chatty, everybody is like, he has autism? No, that can't be. So first they think, he's totally fine. So they don't see the need he has. short, clear emails or short, clear instructions, because otherwise total overwhelm. But on the other side, the people that helped with the internships, they would phone companies saying, well, yeah, he does have autism. So he would get company positions, but without direct client contact, because he's probably not that good at the phone. What?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's,
that sweeping stereotype because of the label.
Yeah.
So I think we're quite lucky in the UK. I'm not talking from experience because I'm a high school dropout from the international standard. I got to 18 and a half and stopped. and then we had a son. So yeah. But in the UK, from speaking with, from knowing about my kids going through school and speaking to friends who have university age kids, actually there's quite a good amount of support for disabled university students in the UK. And I want to think that the UK, the Netherlands, Australia, and the US are probably the most forward thinking when it comes to diversity of how our brains work.
Yeah, but it really depends on the region. I found we
Yeah.
lived in the States as well, in the States, in Kansas, and here in the Netherlands we see it as well, because the support my daughter has is great.
Yeah.
But different college, different university, different kind of support. It's
and part of me thinks that that's a hang up of the British system being more centralized. So primary education in the UK is, state schools are 90% of our schools.
Yeah.
So everyone has the same, one would hope everyone has the same standard of education, standard of support. So then when they go to universities, the universities aren't necessarily publicly funded, although many are. It's a bit of a quagmire, but there's so many rules and regulations about anti-discrimination to hold the universities individually accountable that each of them have a standardized way of dealing with student support at a national standard. So all of them must be able to deliver these assessments and deliver the support to these students. Where, my rudimentary knowledge of the American system, of which the Australian system is based off, is far more local community governed for their public schools, because public and private is also the other way around, although we use both for non-state schools. Let's not. But then as soon as you're in high school, then it's totally different again. And then you're holding each school's governors to account rather than having a regional or national or international standards to say this is the level of support we need. So, knowing that, there's loads of good people at Stanford doing loads of neurodiversity stuff, doing really good. And I can imagine that Alabama, Louisiana, maybe Kansas probably don't have the same level of support in neurodifferences as.
Well, I have to say we were in Kansas, and maybe because we were, military, and we lived off post, so in the town nearby itself. But a lot of the kids that went to school there, their parents, were either based there for 1 to 3 years, or worked for the military base.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of logistic people as well. So there were apparently the number of people or kids with autism was higher than regular, but they knew a lot. Kansas University was great. And the big difference, I don't know how that is in the UK, but in the Netherlands, a school can point out, we see, red flag here, there's a problem there. But to get a diagnosis and get the help, that's all outside of school.
Yeah.
In principle, our healthcare system is great. A lot of it is paid for. It's not like it was 20 years ago, but compared to the States. But I think that the advantage of America, because the healthcare system is
Different.
crap over there.
Different, not less.
Different. Yeah. If you have a lot of money, you're great. If not, problem. But they have a lot of knowledge and educators at the school self. So there's a, of course you have the school nurse, but also somebody that's specialized in different ways of learning. They had an English as second language teacher. They had somebody, for kids with a disability. There was a lot of support. So within 3 or 4 days, somebody came to us saying, we think your kid needs to be assessed because we see a lot of problems. And it was quicker done. And then you had a second person in the classroom just for my son, which I think was great. And they also had this system that if there were more than 20 kids in one class, they would create an extra class. So you had small classes, but it was, Kansas. And I don't think it's the same when you're, I don't know, in Harlem, New York, or so I'm aware that there was way more funding. And I think we were really lucky that we were based near Kansas City, because the healthcare there was great. And there was a lot of knowledge. But in the Netherlands, it still, especially now, there is so much knowledge now about ADHD and autism. But still, it depends on the school, the teacher, especially older teachers that are like, well, we didn't have this back in my day. Yeah.
Oh, we did. We just didn't call it what we call it.
No, yeah. You were just, disruptive or not as smart. And you still see in the Netherlands, state tests are so important. You see the same in America, that you have bumper stickers with, I have a grade A student, my kid only gets A's. And I'm like, can you imagine being that kid that really, really works hard to get that C? And it's apparently not something you can applaud. And I think that mentality as well. So you now see people and teachers, we're extra help for special needs and everything. But still with the intention, everybody should be able to go to university. But why? What's wrong with,
getting a job?
Just work. And what's wrong with getting a C? I saw that with my
a C
my
still
youngest.
a pass. Well, technically, a D, an E, and an F are still passes. It's only a U for ungraded that is not a grade.
Yeah, but it's and I remember one day my son, he was 7 years old in the States, and I remember the professor at Kansas University said to us, language, grammar is just not his thing. Shakespearean English, that would have been fine, but now with all the weird rules nowadays, he can't understand them. And he already said, already teach him where, autocorrect is, and because it won't land. It's not dyslexia, it's just different wired. And I remember him getting a B or a C for an English spelling test in primary school. And we were back in the Netherlands, and they already had problems because they spoke American English. And in the Netherlands, you learn the Queen's English or the King's English now. So you have a lot of old teachers that frown upon American English. But my kids were like, still correct. No, it's wrong. You did
different, not less.
Seriously? And he got a C, and I applauded him. I said, good job, because he tried so hard. And his teacher corrected me in front of him. Would I please never, ever congratulate him with a B or a C because he could do so much better. Like, and I remember that this was his, in the Netherlands, you don't have middle school. So you have primary school till 6th grade when you're 12. And then you have different kinds of high school, different levels of high school. And he had a great teacher in the 4th and the 5th grade. And his teacher in the 6th grade completely destroyed the little confidence he already had, because everything was focused on getting straight A's. And I remember I don't know if in the UK, you probably also have, that you have those final state tests.
So they've rejigged them since I went through, and they rejigged them as my kids went through. So essentially, we used to have one in year 4, which is when you're 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Then they historically the 11 plus, which is the transition between primary school and secondary school, or juniors and high.
Yeah.
And then we had, or we still have, the GCSEs, which is the General Certificate of Secondary Education.
Yeah, yeah.
Which they've just regraded. So historically, it was the statutory tests, also known as SATs, because it was statutory assessment tests, SATs, and they were scored by level. So you'd level 1 is very, very basic. Level 7 is really, really good. So in year 4, I got 2s and 3s. In level 6, I got 4s and 5s. In year 9, they still did SATs, and then you did your GCSEs in year 11. I got the same score in English in year 9 as I did in year 6. So I did 3 extra years of school, but didn't improve my English.
Oh, yeah.
So now we have mandatory education until you're 18, which brings us in line with Europe and the US.
Yeah, we have the same. Yeah.
So until about 5, maybe 7 years ago, you could leave school at 16, go get a job, and just be an adult. Now they're mandatory to 18, which includes apprenticeships. So those people who wanted to go and get a job can now do like day release. So they work a job 4 days a week and then go to college a day.
Yeah, we have the same. Yeah, we have that. If you do you have high school in different levels, and then you have kind of college in different levels. I would think you would call this trade school, probably.
Yeah.
And that's working 4 days.
And then going into learn.
Going to school 1 day. Yeah.
So and now we've got something like 6 different qualification grades at a national standard from 18 years old. That is higher national diploma, BTECs, which is kind of like trade school technical stuff. Yeah. A levels, and when I went through A levels, you had AS levels, which was your first year, A2 that was your second year that made an A level. Now AS levels is a different thing entirely. T levels, which are like BTECs and A levels, but they're A levels for technical things. And that's all before you get to an undergraduate degree. And then you've got your bachelor's, your master's, your doctorates through your university stuff, which is universal. Anyway, yes, we have standardized testing, which was your question.
Yeah, so in the Netherlands, when I went to elementary school, I think we had one state test that kind of depicted which kind of level of high school you were able to go to. But on the other hand, they said, your normal grades, your normal report card at the end of the year, that is also part of it.
Yeah.
And they change it, like in the UK. Sometimes they just like to, mess with parents or something, because we did not understand the new high school system when our kids went to high school. We were like, okay, so what's this level now? And what it's so weird. But nowadays they start doing yearly state tests, maybe even more often, starting at kindergarten. Why?
Because your government want to measure all of your children.
It's so you have your normal, your spelling tests and geography and history, and then you have those state tests. And remember, For my son, the final big state test before high school was in 6th grade when he was 12. 500 questions, I believe, in total. And he came home. I went to university. I didn't understand the whole thing. And I went like, it says here you got half of the questions right. Good for you. And he went like, okay. But it's only, I think, language and math, math. So it's no history, no geography, just no social skills. And he came home the next day saying, well, Mom, so-and-so only had one question wrong. So I think I didn't do right at all. And I said to him, but where in these questions does it say Pepin always helps his friends? Where does it say, they come to you every time somebody needs a hug, they come to you to get a hug? Where does it say that you're the first one to help someone I said, I think that's way more important. And he went like, and relaxed. But it's, if I listen to also, and maybe it would be totally different if I had kids without a thingy. But I think a lot of parents focus on the wrong thing. You even have parents that file a lawsuit, go to court because they don't agree with what the elementary school advises for the high school. They don't agree. And that's not because they think it's too high. That's because they think their kids should have a higher level of high school, should be able to go to a higher level of high school. But what kind of message do you give to your kid then? That it's not okay when you just go to...
You're not good enough!
So...
No. Well, so I saw a meme on social media this week. And it was a teacher, 2 parents and a kid. And it said 20 years ago, when the kid gets low grades, hey kid, why are you getting low grades? And now it's the teacher's fault? But is it the teacher's fault? Now, I can think maybe sometimes, but we now have like these things that mean that children don't do what they should be doing, like their homework when they, I've always tried to instill in my kids my way of doing things. Now, we all know that the ADHD and procrastination monkey comes out when there's a deadline, and we meet the deadline because we've done the thing. But I am always driven with the shiny new projects.
Oh yes.
So all of these and all of that are projects that I've started. Yeah, come back to me when I finish some, but projects that I start. So I've always said, on the day that your homework is set, just do it. It's fresh in your mind. You know what you were talking about. You literally had the lesson 3 hours ago. Spend half an hour, get it out of the way. Oh, well, I'm catching up on stuff that I haven't done yet. So, okay, well then, instead of playing computer games for 5 hours tonight, catch up on all your homework, because you don't have 8 hours worth of homework. And my eldest is now in upper 6th, so he's 18 next year. He'll be going to university next summer. And he's just about in the mindset of not rushing to get his homework done. He's done his homework within a couple of days of needing to hand it. But my second eldest, he's leaving high school this year to go to college because our system's weird. He's 16. And some mornings he's like sitting there at the coffee table, not even the breakfast table, scribbling. I'm like, what are you doing? He was like, my homework. I was like, when's that due? Like, first period. I was like, when was it set? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, but
you've literally had 300 hours in which you could have used half of one of those 300 hours to do your homework in the last 2 weeks.
No, totally get it. Totally get it.
Don't get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, then go back to bed, and then wake up at 7:30 to go to school at 8, and then panic at 7:30 that you haven't done your homework. Get up at 6, do your homework, and have a nice relaxed morning, and then go to school.
No, you don't get it. we can't. We can't. I have a budget meeting tonight, and I still have to finalize the latest details because
I get that because we're also somewhat perfectionists and we want it to be right. So
yeah, no. In this case, I have to be honest. In this case,
you haven't done anything.
it's budget.
Yeah.
I
No, see, you said
detest-
budget.
I-
You said budget. You said budget. I heard bird shit.
no, no.
But yes, budgets are
Yeah.
very, very important.
Yeah. So no, it's really important. I really have to do it for all the funding of projects. But I wait till the very, very last moment. Have some great music on, then it helps. But I need that.
Well, the other good thing about doing it that way is that 3 hours later, when you're in the meeting, all the figures are fresh because you've just worked on them. Yeah, if you work on it two weeks ago, and then you bring it to the meeting, it's like, I don't know the answer to that, flicking through the answers. Where if you do it just before, then it's fresh in your mind because you've just done it, which is that whole homework conversation. You know, when you're being assessed for it, don't revise for a test in 6 months' time. You'll forget what you revised. Revise the couple of days before the test, so it's still in here.
Yeah.
But yeah, my brain's full of lots of useless facts. I'm quite good at quizzes because I just have random knowledge, like the longest river on Earth, or
is that
debatable.
Is that in South America or?
Well,
or is it the Mississippi?
So it depends on who you want to listen to.
Oh.
So Americans will say it's the Mississippi because if you include tributaries and you add tributaries, then the Mississippi is the biggest because it has the biggest tree.
Yeah.
If you look at the longest single river, excluding lakes, then it's the Amazon.
Yeah, I was taught the Amazon.
Including lakes, it's the Nile. Because Lake Victoria is halfway through the Nile.
Oh, yeah. Oh, this will be a fun. I will ask my son. He probably knows the answer because he's full of fun facts as well, because he really loves to watch those history bobs.
That you can walk something like 15,000 miles without crossing water if you walk from the bottom of South Africa to like the top of Russia via Pakistan.
I wouldn't recommend that, but
Neither would I. Well, unless you wanted to like go around the world on foot.
Yeah, I no.
So yeah, lots and lots of useless stuff has gone in here, and very little is stuck. I used to do aerospace engineering, so I used to be able to know what different clouds were.
I've got a husband. We have a game room here with an F-16 on scale built by him. All the little thingies and all the
switches.
And
then does he VR or does he have like multi screens?
No. Okay. So the seat is like an F-16. All the thingies are like it.
Yeah.
But that's better than watching soccer. So I'm glad that's his hobby.
Well,
not. So. Yeah. No, I grew up in a really fanatic household. Yeah. I think my mom was even the worst. So I'm glad that I kind of chose him. Do you like sports? No? Okay, then we're good.
Are we going to fall out over which team you support? No. Okay, cool. So is he a mechanic or a pilot or?
No. My husband is officially, I think, armor, so tanks.
Right.
That's his branch. And now he's a colonel in infantry.
Okay. So why an F-16?
Well, why not?
Okay.
And he has also, but that's not in scale, so that's just only the computer screens for I think a 737.
Okay.
Just because. That's and I think that's maybe the bonus if you have like a single focused hobby. I've got a lot of hobbies.
It's almost like he has a special interest.
Yeah.
So what drove you to writing your book?
Well, for juvenile arthritis, so I wrote this book for really the youngest kids with juvenile arthritis, because how can you explain juvenile arthritis to a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old? And because communication is my jam, for the Dutch Juvenile Arthritis Association, I've got marketing and communication in, that's my part of my responsibility. And when I got on board, it was still a lot of old-fashioned stuff. So a lot of the info was for parents. And I started hiring a company that made animations. But then still, if you're 3 or 4 years old, and I remember my kids, loving to read those picture books, just a few words. So as a kid, you could just flicker through it, or if you were able to just start reading, you had those 1-syllable words. So there is still not enough, but more and more info out there. And I'm transferring a lot of info to animations for young kids, young adults. But there was something missing. So that's why I wrote this little book for really for the youngest kids with juvenile arthritis, because it's so hard to explain this disease. And this is just about, our mascot is a monkey. So this is about that little monkey that one day he wakes up and his legs are tired. And it's really stupid because he wants to play soccer. And sometimes he falls asleep in the class and kids laugh and he doesn't understand it. And because he's so tired, he gets cranky and everybody's stupid. His mom is stupid and the teacher is stupid. But really deep down, he's sad. And then in the end of the book, he's explained that, he has that certain disease, and it's like his legs just often need a holiday just to relax. And it's not to make it fun, because there's absolutely no fun about having juvenile arthritis, but to make it understandable. And that your legs need a break, for instance. And of course, it doesn't only have to be legs, but can be all joints, really. That's easier to understand when you're that young. And it also, we found out, it also helps grandparents understand. And parents, connecting with their kid around this disease, because often the kid experiences it this way and the parents experiences it in another way. And this is also kind of a bonding thingy. So that's why. And I'm also writing, finally writing now. Was already on my computer for 3 years. My own. Yeah. I think I have 3 or 4 unfinished books in my computer, but I now signed up for a writers club, accountability, because I'm writing Diary of a Special Needs Mom. Really my story with tips for young special needs moms, because I struggled so much in the beginning, finding understanding and how to deal with the outside world.
We did that by shutting ourselves away from it. So we don't really have any friends. We enjoy each other's company, and that's all right. But no, my sister had her first son 3 months before I had my eldest. And at 3, my nephew, was diagnosed autistic and ADHD at 3.
Wow.
It might have been 5, but it was early.
Yeah.
By which time my second son was 2 or 3. And just seeing the similarity of behavior, but the total stark difference in parenting. So we've always been supportive parents. You should always give 100%, but if you've only got 50% in your tank, then your 100% is 50%.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not expecting you to be the best version of yourself every day, because nobody can do that. Yeah, don't get sidetracked. There's a comedian bit that I want to come back to.
I think it's not a sidetracking thing at all. It makes
Well, so
perfect
anyway,
sense.
so I've been watching this comedian. He's from Northern Europe, Scandinavian somewhere.
Oh, I think I know which one you mean.
And he was talking about so he's in America on tour,
Yeah,
and he's talking about people being ill. And he's like, you know, when you're on your deathbed, you can't get out of bed, you can't go to work, you call in and say, "Hey boss, I'm not feeling 100%." And he was like, "I don't think I've ever felt 100%." So, you know, in that conversation, you know, do what you can.
Yeah.
And the other side of the conversation, you know, my sister's parenting of my nephew was feckless, totally ambivalent. Just you just do you. You know, I'm not talking of my sister in a very high regard.
Yeah.
And let's not dwell on that. And now, you know, he's 18 in February. At a special needs sixth form college. And he's unlikely to become a productive member of society. Where very similar genes, I've got two A star, A B students in my two boys who at 3 to 5 had very similar behaviors. And part of me thinks that there's something of that nurturing, something of that safe space creation that has allowed them to be their best selves rather than being allowed to wallow. Oh, you're special now. I don't need to ask anything of you because you're special. Rather than, you know, we didn't do anything to get our kids diagnosed. You know, none of our kids have got a label. We just asked them to do what they can do.
Yeah.
And what that transpired is that the two girls want to go into art, although my eldest daughter is now trained to be like an emergency first aider, and she's now looking at becoming a paramedic.
Wow.
And the two boys, my eldest wants to go and do chemical engineering to either make bombs or pharmaceuticals. He hasn't decided what he wants to make, but he's going to go do chemical engineering. And then my youngest son, who's 16, wants to do journalism. Yeah, he wants to go and write. So, you know, despite us bringing up the family with very similar hobbies, we've let them go off and do their own bits with our backing, and they're off doing all kinds of wonderful things.
Yeah, but I have to say, you know, we've also always been really supportive. You know, my son, you know, he has labels, and I'm pro label, but I'm also naive in the sense.
Or you're pro
pro
label,
label,
anti stigma.
Yeah, yes, but pro label. Why? Because first of all, yeah, anti stigma. There's nothing wrong if you have ADHD or autism,
Yeah,
or whatever else. But you know, it can also help you understand yourself better and find out what you need. You know, so our son always, you know, got the help. He went to special education, you know, for high school. Mostly because we went, you know, school shopping. You do that in the Netherlands. You go to several high schools, which fits, and you know, and he was so overwhelmed with, is there an app that I can find my way? And you know, he went like, and they advised us, you know, maybe check out the special education high school. And I was like, oh my gosh, this will be the end and everything. Not at all, but and he went there and he went like, oh, there's one
just
classroom,
yeah.
one teacher, and sometimes there's another teacher. Not that that was ideal at all, but you know, different story, different rabbit hole. So we always supported him, but and we never. The funny thing is, we never noticed anything wrong with our son, because we always joked that he had this really strict, single focus thing. Well, like his dad, and they're really energetic all over the place, like his mom. So, and we were functioning just fine, not realizing later on, I grew up in, my dad had his own business. I had two brothers, really structured week, really structured family, on these days this, on these days. And that brings peace and quiet.
Of stability. Yeah.
Stability. And at our home as well, my husband is away a lot. So in the weekend, he likes to do nothing. Doesn't like to socialize. He doesn't, and I like the quietness as well. So again, stability, structure. And I think most kids, by the way, thrive on stability. And we got him the help, but from early on, we knew that perfectionist, but also low self-esteem, deadly combination. So, you can throw a lot of courses on them and help, but if that's kind of your core, and then you graduate, really highly valued college paper, but he really struggles to go explore, and what we would think is normal. You open your computer. I mean, you can find all this nerd stuff. Why can't you just open computer, find job that involves? He too overwhelmed to do something about that. So he needs help with that, and he gets help with that. And on the other hand, talking about siblings, I thought I had ADHD, but I knew if I have ADHD, one of my brothers, definitely, he was the classic. But, in our time, you didn't have that label. But classic ADHD. And my sister-in-law even worked in special education, but they didn't want a label. What they didn't realize, their son already had a label. Annoying little shit was the label. Called in the principal's office all the time because he was disruptive, he was bullying. But at a certain moment, my sister-in-law started working at an elementary school, so she was able to help him and guide him and putting out all the fires. And now he's first year in high school. And by the time we had autumn break, all the teachers hated his guts because he was disruptive. So they were really...
Well, because he didn't have a quarterback anymore putting out fires.
And his help was his mom sitting him down, taking away all the stuff around him, helping him, sitting next to him, just drilling him. Yes, but that's not the real world. And at a certain moment, also my husband said, we're not going to do their homework. We can help them and give them, directions. But I did high school. I'm not doing high school again.
Well, the other thing is that they've also changed in the UK, they've changed how they teach. So my son came home from primary school doing the bus stop method of adding. And I'm like, just add it. Just what?
When we taught our son the old way of, I don't know how you call it, that you have a number and you have to divide it by so many. And there's nowadays a new method. And everybody's like, how? What? And we taught him the old method. And he went like, oh, simple, structured. Yeah. Nowadays, with all those books, we see it with our daughter as well. We're like, and everything it looks really nice. There are pictures and color boxes and bold text. And at the end, there are, 10 questions so you can check, if you know the stuff. But we were checking the questions and we were like, but we can't find the precise answer in the whole bloody chapter because it's all
written by neurotypical. Oh. What you need is, somebody who can think in 3-dimensional space, who can cut all the budgets out of it.
Yeah. And nowadays a lot of the books are using a font called sans serif. So that's You have and the old classic font, like a Times New Roman, if you look at it, it has like little lines at the bottom and at the top. If you have dyslexia, that's really helpful because it makes a line. So, and, if you have dyslexia or, also a differently wired, or you put text in diapositive because it looks really fun if it's a yellow letter and a blue background. Really hard to read. Or everything in capital, same thing.
Well, so I studied aerospace engineering. So I was used to writing everything in caps because that's how in the trade we write, so we can understand each other's handwriting. Because everyone writes a capital letter the same way. So how many ways can you draw a letter A in lowercase? You can have a curly bit on the top.
Yeah. Or you can have
the round bit and the bar. You can have a round bit and a kick. You can, and then that expands on your Fs. How quickly do you want your Fs?
But if you have it, in Word, in computer programming, I'm like, oh, and nowadays there is a dyslexia font. You don't need a dyslexia font.
I don't.
You can just use,
Well, so it's really funny that my old boss was a copy editor, and she was like, I like Verdana. Verdana's really easy to read. Okay, well the corporate guidance is Verdana. And then you look on British Dyslexia Association, who's like top fonts, Verdana. I was like, yeah, because it's just a clean, simple, no serifs, nothing funky. It's just and then 1.5 line spacing, and 0.11 plus, just I can manage that. It's nice and structured and it flows. Don't put justify on because then the spaces between words changes, and that really, anyway. I don't like reading. It's just I don't know.
No, it's so funny, because I never realized I am a reader. I like books. I like letters. I learn best by reading. I learn best. I just want to read it. My husband, on the other hand, colonel in the army, top level. And the other day I was complaining about a new news app or an upgrade of the national news. And I was like, seriously, they start with videos now? I just want to read the body text. And he went like, I'm so glad that they changed it, because the moment I have to read it, I will.
Yeah, they're playing to the demographics. And the algorithm can see that. Is, hang on a second, we're getting X engagement from video content versus Y engagement on written. Well, we're going to put the video content first because we need the engagement.
Yeah.
And that's half of the problem.
But I think because of he has late diagnosed dyslexia, we found out because our daughter got diagnosed. And I remember the first time he got deployed, and I would get letters from him because we didn't have smartphones back those. He was able to call once in every 3 weeks, so we wrote letters. And I would read his letters going like, he makes the strangest spelling mistakes. How the? And then later on we found out. But because of this, he is great at giving presentations, because he won't do the classic death by PowerPoint. Where you put all the available information on a slide that nobody's going to read and
then nobody's listening because everyone's trying to read while you're speaking, and they're not listening to you, and because you're speaking, they're not reading. So
and nobody remembers it because there was way too much info on it.
Yeah.
And he always got complimented for making the most complex things really simple, because he has a drawing board, he gets a Sharpie, and and everybody's going like, oh, because he
just has the ability to break it down. And so much of life is fluff, which is ironic because we're ADHD and we're talking off-piste. But the fact is that when we need to be precise, sometimes we can be precise. So I had a very interesting conversation at one of our board meetings recently, because we were toing and froing for like 40 minutes, and then somebody said, "What are we talking about? what do we need to achieve?" And then in one sentence, I was like, that's it. We could talk all about how we did it 30 years ago. Doesn't matter. We could talk about all of our thoughts and feelings.
Doesn't matter.
We just need to answer this question. And the question is, should we or should we not do the thing? Can I have a yes? Oh, unanimous yes. Good. Right, write that down, because now we've got a board resolution. Yeah. Hooray. But yeah, the amount of times that we get complained at that, committee meetings for committee meetings' sake just are useless. A camel was a horse made by a committee. Well, maybe a camel was a horse made by a committee without a chairman, because maybe a good facilitator of a committee could actually make a decent racehorse. I'm just saying. And a Formula One car is a racehorse made by a scrum team, because they looked at the problem and then actually designed something that met the problem rather than redesigned what you already had. But yeah, it is quite astounding how many neurodivergent traits are benefits without wanting to then get into the neurodivergent superpowers conversation. Because a little bit like arthritis, you can sometimes have a laugh and a joke about it, but at the end of the day, it's not nice. And then neurodiversity being on a spectrum, some people are awesome. And some people just about manage, and some people are really having a tough time. So when you turn around to somebody who can barely function, barely communicate, barely feed themselves, and say, you have superpowers, is that not patronizing them a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think you have to give them the choice too. I think I'm just
empower them to be them.
Yeah.
But not expecting somebody to be Einstein or Elon Musk. We're on a spectrum, and you doing the best you can is all we can ask. And me saying, oh, well, because you've got this label, you should be able to do all of this stuff. It's just more stigma and stereotypes that are potentially not helpful.
I have to be honest. I really call it my superpower. On the other hand, at the same time, it's also definitely my kryptonite.
Yep.
So it's a balance. But I think I was lucky to, if I think back now that, that I was brought up in a really structured way, being a really responsible kid, that really helped. And doing the study that was, close to my heart. I was already writing. I made my first magazine and I sold it for 10 cents when I was 8 years old. So that I studied journalism and design, in that way I was really lucky, and that my husband is really quiet and more, introvert. So we match. But he also loves the fact that, he always quotes, I will say Mark Darcy in Bridget Jones. I love you just the way you are, or I like you just the way you are. Because he's always, I'm amazed. How many, can you please finish a sentence now? Because you just started 8, but he doesn't mind. And otherwise, I don't think we would have been married for 25 years. Sometimes I think you also find the partner that compliments you.
Well, so opposites attract is definitely a saying. And I'm a big fan of long-term sayings because they tend to be true. Like, the truth hurts.
Yes.
But we also tend to attract ourselves.
Yeah.
So you either end up with a super you because there's 2 of you, or a balanced human being because you've managed to find somebody who fills in your gaps.
But I need him for the quietness, and he needs me to, decide to, let's move to America, or, let's go, he posted to Germany. Why not? because he would be like, well, maybe it's not sensible. And I would be like, it's an adventure. Yeah.
But and just think another few years, and then the kids can be left at home, and then you can go all around the world with them.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So
No, I've got a friend in the Royal Air Force who has brought his kids up whilst he's been touring and deploying. And he's like, oh well, when the kids are adults, I'll retire. And I'm like, but that's completely the wrong way round. Surely, when the kids retire, then you want to get your posting to, the Antarctic or Alaska or somewhere cool, and then you can take your wife with you around the world on your awesome postings. But he met his wife on a posting, so he's British, she's not, and he'd spent time in Germany and Canada, and they'd just come back from Canada 2 years before he came here, and then he ran the Hercules program here in the UK. So basically, everybody outside of America needing their Hercules serviced got them done here in the UK. And he basically ran that program for 2 years, basically during COVID. And his two boys are the same age as my middle two kids. And he has the life that I would have had if I hadn't flunked out of aerospace engineering when I was 16. So yeah, a little bit jealous. And then I told my youngest son who's the same age as Justin's son, who has the same name. I was like, you two are like 3 months apart with the same name. That's kind of funny. And then Oliver's like, Mum, you ruined Dad's life, because if it wasn't for you, then he'd be like Justin. And I'm like, no, if I hadn't got kicked out of sixth form, I would never have met your mum. So some of that's on me. Some of that is not being diagnosed early enough to then have somebody put fires out for me. If I'd gone into sixth form and went, oh, by the way, I'm a bit of a fire starter, give me some space, and maybe I would now be, a senior officer in the Royal Air Force fixing planes for them. But that's not what happened. Cool.
But yeah, I think we also we yeah, I don't want to say, I totally don't believe in, you get what you deserve, or you
So you don't believe in karma?
Well, yeah, sometimes, well, especially with bad people, I really like karma. But it's not like there's this destiny for you out there that one day this will happen. You have influence on it. I sometimes still blame myself because I did the fourth year in high school. I did that twice. But the second time with way easier subjects to study, because my parents really got scared. And the only reason I failed was because I turned 16. I didn't do anything. So, of course, I flunked.
Yeah, but what 16-year-old does?
So, and now
if you're given the freedom to do nothing, you're going to do nothing.
So, and I was finally like, this is not important in life, blah, blah, blah. Well, like most 16-year-olds. Yeah. But on the other hand, so sometimes I'm like, oh, if I wouldn't have flunked out, I would have become an architect, and I really wanted that. But, I wrote my first magazine when I was 8 years old. So I think in the end, I did what I needed to do.
Well, you were always in writing.
Yeah.
Your architecture was a divergence.
Oh, that's a nice one. Yeah. Yeah, and to be honest, the moment there's an extra dimension kicked in, I'm useless. So it's a good thing, I think, I stayed in the printed two-dimensional world. I just realized that.
So you could do floor plans, just not buildings.
Yeah, no. The moment there's I'm like, yeah, no, I can't. Interior decoration, things like that. No. So, yeah, it helps if you have a really good support system, I think, because I hear the stories too about people that aren't able to hold down a job, and then I'm like, but because that was so not my story. And of course, I had things going wrong when I was younger, but I think in the end, it really helped that, there was this structured base, that, that solid foundation. So I think that definitely helps. But even, I don't think you can ever be old enough to start something new.
No, I shared a meme on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago. Why do you know so much about everything? And the comment was, I've quit more things than you started.
Yeah, but there's also, I think, they say you can know a lot about one thing, or
A little about a lot.
a lot of, a little about a lot of things. And I love to, because I'm so interested in so many things. I think that's why I love being, a science writer. I write about the most geekiest things, and I have to research it and study it, and it's a new subject. And algae cultivation, well, never wrote about it, but I don't need to know how it works. Well, of course, a little bit, but
Well, yeah,
but I know how to explain it, and to a non-nerd, I can research it, and I don't have to go to college for it for 4 years, but I can decipher, all the nerd stuff and make it understandable. And one time it's algae cultivation, and I thought algae were, those green leaves in the ocean. It's not, tubes and really, a lot of nerd scientists, but it's fascinating. And on the other hand, I write about, smart homes and things like that, and on a high tech level. And I'm like, cool, didn't know that yet. Oh, I can write about. So I get paid to study something and then ungeek it.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So I think, yeah. Yeah, so I didn't do a one single focus study, but thank God I didn't, because how boring is that? That you only have one subject thingy.
but then this is where I could be talking to the reformed convict architect, because your enthusiasm for new experiences then found its own way out. So you pigeonholed yourself and then went and did extraordinary, audacious things, where actually your job is audacious. So then you can be a little bit more civilized in society.
Yeah, I think the common thread between all those different thingies are words. And yeah, that in that case, yeah, is my jam. Design and words. So yeah.
So we've been going over an hour. Is there something that you wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about?
Well, I think we can easily go on for hours, but I don't think we should. No, I would say, if I can give a tip to your audience, don't choose. Why should you choose? Because I see that, especially when you're an entrepreneur, or if you have a younger kid, they now already have to have their passion at this age. Why? What's wrong with having, multiple outlets?
And some life experience before you settle down with a decision.
Yes, go fail and do something else, and especially live life. The other day, with my son, with all his issues, me and my husband went to bed early, and that's normal. I'm a typical night owl, so normally.
So is that like 11 p.m. instead of 2 a.m.?
No, I think it was really, really early. So it was like 10 o'clock p.m. I was a little bit under the weather, because otherwise you couldn't drag me to bed that early. But but my husband gets up really early, so he has to go to bed early. So we were both in bed early. My son knocks on the bedroom door saying, so and so wants to come over because there's stuff going on, and he just needs to chat, and we will chat in the garden. And I said, you can go to the living room. And I remember I was so proud of him, that of everything, you can become. I think becoming a nice, a good
decent human
person,
being,
a
yeah.
decent human being is the highest thing you can achieve. Because in the end, you know, if you're, you know, people are burying you, they're not going to talk about, you know, he always worked
he
all
got
the
A
time,
stars.
all the time, A stars. And they're talking about
That
things you did together and things that that person meant for them. And that's never about, well, I was so proud of him because he got straight A's all the time. No, it's about life experiences. And so, and it was so funny because just before I was worrying about stuff not going well, you know, with my son, and he knocked on the door and I went like, it's about this, you know, being a decent human being. And, you know, if you're a mom with a struggling kid, don't focus on getting straight A's. You know, that's not what your kids should get their self-worth out. There's more to life than getting straight A's, I think.
Yeah. And my passing advice as very nearly a teenage father. I was 20 and 3 months when we had my eldest. All advice and all feedback should be weighed and measured, and not all of it should be listened to. You know yourself and your child better than anybody else. So when somebody goes, well, you should, well, maybe they should go for a walk. Yeah, you got this. You just need to believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And I went on a psychotherapy retreat 4 years ago to deal with childhood wounding because I'm overly sensitive and defensive. No, I've got ADHD. But anyway, on that retreat, there was 14 people on the retreat. 12? 14. There was lots of us on the retreat. All the way through from domestic abuse, sexual assault victims, survivors, all the way through to helicopter parented prissy people. It doesn't matter what you do, you will fuck up your kids. There's nothing you can do about that.
Yes. Yeah. It's whatever you do, it's never the right thing.
No.
And you know, in the end, because I have to be honest, I am like this mama bear. But in the end, they have to find their own way. They have to fight. And it's really painful to watch if you have kids that are dealing with mental issues. But they have to fight their own battles and conquer their own fears. Because, yeah, it's I can't do that for them. And, you know, if you want to, you know, go into a burnout as a special needs parent, really try to get everything out of the way and solve everything for your kids. And
it's a little bit in the Fellowship of the Ring, where Frodo's going to go to Mordor, and then everybody like offers themselves and or their equipment, and it's nice to have people to lean on, but you also need to give your weapons to your child so they've got the tools they need to do stuff with. And occasionally you can parachute in and go, hey, school, you're being dicks, this is what my kid needs. But actually you should be empowering your kid to have that conversation and go, hey, teach, I didn't get lunch today because the lunch system's knackered. I've got a health problem that means I need to eat. So can I get a lunch pass so I can go 2 minutes early so I can actually get some food? Which is a conversation that I've had with the school in the last month, because my daughter's got a heart condition and she went all day on a cereal bar and a bottle of water. And I'm like, guys, just what are you doing? And, you know, my school, or the kids' school, the state school here, is 250th in the country It's 11th in the region, and it's the top in our county. It is the best state school in 50 miles. So you should be looking after your kids enough to say, we've managed the queue so you can actually get some hot food.
Yeah, but in the end, at a certain moment, they have to start doing it for themselves. We see that with our daughter now, that and I'm like, why didn't you? Okay, you're 18 years old now. I really sometimes have to strain myself, but
yeah,
I can't. But I, like you said, I love the connection with the Fellowship of the Ring. In the end, Frodo says this as well. It's his burden to but the fact that he has Sam helps, get there and go through whatever it is. And actually, my son said, he asked if is it okay if my friend comes because he's having a hard time. And he came back later saying, I'm so glad you two are my parents. Because that kid came to us because he can't talk to his parents. And they, he didn't talk to us, but, to our son. But I'm like, wow. Yeah, he has to find his own way. But it helps if you have find your people. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think that's an awesome place to stop if you're happy.
Yes.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on and spending an hour and 20, an hour and 30 with me talking about all kinds of interesting stuff, from neurodivergent kids and full-sized simulations of combat vehicles and international travel and all kinds of jet setting, and the challenges of being a mum of special needs kids.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a blast.
Fantastic.